leadership and governance is not simply an African problem. It is a global problem. I think the world today is in a serious short measure about leadership and governance. It's not an African problem. And so I'm hoping that the African school of governance is not about figuring out how to correct things we have done wrong, which we need to do right. It's about how we can contribute to a new landscape globally. Thank you. There are some things we Africans have got wrong. That is a fact. But as you say, PM, there are many things we have done right. But so is Asia, so is Latin America, so is Europe, so is the US, so is everywhere. So as all of us today in the world struggle about what kind of world do we want to create, the challenge of this school is to be part of that conversation. Yes, of course, we have issues of corruption, of governance, of conflict, of bad leadership. We accept that, all right? But I'm one of those who are very skeptical that actually our governance deficit is any less than I've seen in Latin America, or Asia, or the Middle East, Europe, or even North America. And so I think for us, for this school of governance, is how do we project our view of the world in the new landscape? If we do that, we shall have done service to Africa and the world. That is the first point I want to make.
I'm sorry, before you make the second point. So you're saying that African leaders are not any more corrupt than North American leaders or European leaders or Asian leaders. There's just more attention.
You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I'm not about to give a corruption scorecard here. No. I'm saying we have had a situation since 1945 where attempt to shape a global order has progressively faced huge amounts of deficits everywhere from different levels. Do you know, there was a time when Latin America was described as a land of hyperinflation, putsch, all kinds of issues were described in Latin America.
Right.
There was a time when Southeast Asia was described like that. There was a time when Vietnam was described as a land of boat people running from Vietnam. As I've said here before, I think Acha was there. Now Vietnam is an economy which has gone from $15 billion GDP in 1994 to $500 billion. So I'm trying to be helpful, sir. You said I should be helpful. Our school of governance must begin from the viewpoint that we accept things we have done wrong. Right? We recognize the direction of travel. This is what we intend to do for ourselves. But this is our view of the world. We're not about here to be on the defensive and we have done things wrong and therefore we need to get things right. No. That is my concern. Now, my second point, and I'm really glad to see very illustrious people here to help us. In the 1960s, if you asked many people in the world, what does Africa need? They would tell you Africa needs money, it needs capital. And so aid organizations were created, international institutions were created to provide this capital to Africa. By the time I was doing my master's degree, which a long time ago, you can see my age, the speeches had changed. They said that Africa does not need just money, it needs good policies. But what are good policies? Whose policies? So we ended up with policies as defined by the neoliberal establishment in the West. So yes, we needed good policies, obviously, but whose policies? Who defines those policies? By the time I was finishing my doctorate, the narrative had changed. It was no longer about policy, it was, no. The problem with Africa is it has no execution capacity. Okay, so building capacity. So the like of McKinsey were very busy building capacity. Now, I agree, we needed capital, We need the policies and we need the capacity. Sure. By the time I began my career, there was now the new narrative. No. Now we need governance. And later, we need institutions. The problem is, all those things are needed. You need capital, you need policy, you need execution, you need governance, you need institutions. But the problem is, who defines the content? And please forgive me for saying this. I don't know how to say this to you. I made one of the biggest mistakes of my long career. When I left the African Development Bank, I got convinced to spend 2 years in a Western school of governance. Very famous. So I will not mention the name. But some people in this room met me there, so.
We had several.
To be honest, after 1 year, I was totally convinced I made a wrong choice. I said, no, this is not my place. Because it was about a place where you go to and they bring these bright African students, fantastic guys. And they said to them, look, we are who we are. This is how we do things. We are the best in the world. So go out there and do what we do and you'll be fine. And I could not agree with that. And so I was happy to leave. And so when I see a school like this being founded, I have very high hopes and aspirations. I have to play my role as a board member to try to do this. But please, let us not begin on the foundations that somehow Africa is an exception in the world in terms of the governance deficit or leadership deficit. There are many things happening in the world today, outside Africa, which frankly are something we all must work together to change and must be part of that conversation. This is what I wanted to say, sir, and you didn't force me to come here, so.
Thank you.
It now has become an outlier almost in that region. Because we tend to compare Africa and Asia as if something is unique there. In my view, if you had asked me 20 years ago or so, the Philippines would be actually the performer in the region. And something has happened there. The reason I'm saying this, I'm hoping that this school, under the leadership of Professor Mahalo, will also try to figure out what are the lessons in Africa which can enlighten the rest of the world. It is not by accident that school is in Kigali. I know our president worked very hard to make this case. I know Prime Minister Haile Mariam, but it is here, I think, not by accident. There are some things here which can be useful, not just to Africa, but other parts of the world. I was at a meeting recently in Cape Town, I think, where I had 2 American corporations loading how Rwanda is combining simple technologies and community health workers to deliver health outcomes at a higher level than countries with better spend in per capita terms. So there are many things we have done wrong in Africa, for sure, tons of them. But there are also many things we can actually project to the rest of Africa and the rest of the world. And I want to end by saying the following. 2 weeks ago, I was in Mogadishu, believe it or not. Friends of mine think I was crazy. I was there for a special mission. And one of the things which was exercising my mind, but how does a country survive for 40 years without a government? How does the private sector flourish in such an environment? Because on that particular day, the president had just inaugurated a 5-star hotel in Mogadishu. Can you imagine? I'm sure Prime Minister Haile Mariam, this is a neighborhood he knows very well. So the private sector in that country has shown how to operate in extremely difficult circumstances. Is that not a lesson for the world? Is that not a lesson for the world? It is.
It is.
Especially for our friends in the Middle East who are going through those challenges, or in Ukraine or somewhere else. If Rwanda can deliver great health outcomes at less than $85 per capita, which is the ideal spend in health, that is a big lesson for everyone. So that's why during COVID, for example, you found that countries like Rwanda, South Korea, Vietnam, and a few other people did better than Italy, especially the northern part of Italy, hugely rich part of Italy, did very badly on COVID outcomes. Rwanda did better than. So what I'm saying to you is that we have to accept things we have done wrong and fix them. It's a starting point. But then we have also to figure out what are those things we can scale up to other African countries, even within our own countries, and also to project to the rest of the world. That is the only point I'm making, Professor Kingsley. But if you give me the job, as Larry Mado says, to teach at your school, I will say this, but I want to say to you that I'm not looking for a job.